live audience doesn't intimidate you, right?
Not a bit.
Okay. You came from very modest circumstances.
Modest is not the word.
Very few people in the world are known by one name.
They started me with a campaign called What is an Oprah?
You're a big shareholder in Weight Watchers.
That is a sign when Weight Watchers says, let us help you.
Yeah, right. Have you ever thought you could actually run for president?
I thought, oh, gee, I don't have the experience. I don't know enough. I don't know. And now I'm thinking, oh.
Would you fix your tie, please?
Well, people wouldn't recognize me if my tie was fixed, but okay. Just leave it this way. All right. I don't consider myself a journalist, and nobody else would consider myself a journalist. I began to take on the life of being an interviewer, even though I have a day job of running a private equity firm. How do you define leadership? What is it that makes somebody tick?
Tweet, tweet. Hello.
Okay. Well, the live audience doesn't intimidate you, right?
Not a bit.
Okay.
I feel right at home, actually. It's the one thing I miss from the Daily Show. You know, every now and then somebody will say, do you miss the show? No, I don't miss the show. What I miss is the people, is the camaraderie, because what I did every day is have my own after show with the audience. So I would talk to the audience probably half an hour to 40 minutes after every show, starting 10 years in. Because at first I did autographs every day, and I'd stand there by road and I'd do the autographs and never look up, trying to get through 350.
Right.
And then one day I decided, oh gee, I don't want to do that anymore, but what do I really want to do? I want to talk to this audience. I want to find out who they are, where they come from. So I started like talking to them 10 years in, and that became my favorite part of the day.
Wow.
Yeah. It was my own personal focus group. It's the reason why we were #1 for 25 years, because I used the information that I gathered every day from people who were the greatest resource. They were the people who were viewers, who had taken the time to come with their aunts and daughters and cousins and a few husbands who would be like, well, I came to Oprah.
So
that's going to be good for at least 2 months. Yeah, worth of something.
That show was on for 25 years in Chicago, and when you did it, you won, I think, almost 50 Emmy Awards, and it was voted one of the best TV shows in the history of TV. So you ended it, though, after 25 years to do other things, and we'll talk about that, but you no regrets about ending that show.
No regrets whatsoever. You know, I didn't want to be punch drunk in the ring, still trying to come up with what is the next thing, because over the years, we became our own greatest competition. So when I first started, went national in 1986, every time there'd be another talk show, I'd be, oh, Geraldo Rivera, oh, what are we going to do? And then I realized a couple of years in that you run your own race better than anybody. If you take the time to see what everybody else is doing, you lose your ground. And that I could be a better me than I could be anybody else, and so no need of trying to compare myself to other people. So once I got that, we hit our own rhythm, and also once I discovered that it wasn't just a show, but that it was a platform in which to speak to the world. And then, that was about '89, when I thought, okay, what do you want to say to the world? How do you want to be used and not have the TV use you, but how do I want to use it?
What drives you to keep working so hard? You could, you know, you and I are in the 60s category. And so when you're in your 60s, you know you've lived more than you're going to live, realistically. So when you realize you've lived more than you're going to live, you can say, why not relax a little bit? Why not just ease up? Why have you decided to even work harder than you did before?
Because I think, David, that everybody, you know, the thing that worked for me all these years, whether it was the magazine, or which I still have, or whether it was the show, I understood that there's a common denominator in the human experience. And I want the same thing you want, which is the same thing you want and you want. What we all want is to be able to live out the truest, highest expression of ourselves as a human being. That doesn't end until you take your last breath. What is the truest, highest vision that you hold for yourself? No matter where you are in your life, there's always the next level. There's always the next level to the last breath. So I feel that I always knew that I would be done with the show when I felt like, oh, I've said as much as I could say here on this platform. And then how will I be used? If there were a theme song to my life, Amazing Grace would be one of them, and Keep on Using Me Till You Use Me Up would be another one. You know that Bill Withers song? Yes. So I feel that until you have used your value as a human being, you're not done.
Okay. So today, if you look back on what you've achieved already, and let's suppose you've got a long way to go before you're finished achieving everything, what would you say are the greatest pleasures that you have received, or what you're most proud of?
Okay, so these are good. Thank you. This is good.
Okay. All right. Well,
this is good.
Well, I watch your interview show, so I know how to do some interviews.
I think the thing that I am most proud of reminds me of when I had done my school in South Africa. I have a school in South Africa for girls, and I wanted to create this school.
This is just celebrated its 10th anniversary.
Just celebrated 10th anniversary. I've got girls from Brown to Stanford to Elon, all over the United States going to school. I have 10 graduations to attend in 2017. But I remember when I started the school and I said to my beloved friend, Maya Angelou, I said, Maya, I'm just so proud that I was able to create this school. And I said, this is going to be my greatest legacy. And Maya said to me, you have no idea.
Right.
You have no idea what your legacy will be, she said to me, because your legacy is every life you've touched. And that shifted the way I saw legacy or what you leave behind or what you do. Because Maya was explaining to me that, you know, over all the years of watching your show, everybody who decided that they were going to go back to school or lose weight or no longer hit their children or get out of a bad marriage, all of those people who have seen and experienced your voice, and the same thing with everybody here. You have no idea what your legacy will be. Your legacy is every life that you've touched. And we like to think of it, I know you have done amazing things with your philanthropy. We like to think that these great philanthropic moments are the ones that leave the impact or will make the huge difference in the world. But it's really what you do every day. It's how you use your life to be a light to somebody else's, you know, and it's how you use your work as an expression of your own art, whatever that is. So I think I would say the girls, as I get to watch them now graduate from college and move into their lives, but really there is a moment that happened to me just about a year after I went national. There was a woman in Ann Arbor, Michigan, who wrote me a letter that will go on I'm not going to have a tombstone, but if I had a tombstone and wasn't cremated, it would go there. She said, Oprah, watching you be yourself every day makes me want to be more of myself. And I just don't know of anything better than that. So I am most proud of, and just yesterday, I went to see Notes from the Field with Anna Devere Smith, and in the bathroom, this woman comes up to me and says, you know, I've watched you all these years, and you did so much for me. And I used to just hear people say, oh, I watch your show, I love you, I watch your show. And about 10 years in, about the time I started talking to the audience, I would stop people and say, so tell me, what is it that moved you? Why do you love the show? Why do you? And this woman said to me just yesterday, you helped me to be more of myself.
So
that's
being Oprah, is it hard to go to the bathroom in these public places? People are, I mean, isn't that kind of challenging at times?
As a matter of fact, it was, because there was another lady attacking me because she thought I didn't do enough for Mrs. Clinton. So then, so somebody else came out of a stall, this is yesterday, and said, leave Oprah alone. She's just trying to pee.
Right, okay. Well, did they follow that advice or no? Okay.
No, and she followed me out, talking about what I could have done, should have done, blah, blah, blah.
Very few people in the world are known by one name. With Oprah, there's Elvis, there's Jesus, very few people.
And it's only when I was challenged with the idea of changing it that I thought, no, I'm going to keep my name.
you think about what you've accomplished. You came from very modest circumstances. You didn't come from a wealthy family.
Well, modest is not the word.
Well, I was trying to be polite.
I mean, I was actually poor. And a lot of the girls at my school, actually all the girls from my school are poor. And I was saying to them just recently, I was just in South Africa for a graduation, you all are come from the same circumstances. You are poor. And one of the girls raised her hand and said, I don't like using that word. I go, well, if you're not poor, then you should excuse yourself, because that's why I'm paying for you, because you're in this school. So if you're not poor, you don't like the choice of the word. So I don't have a problem with the word. I don't have any shame about it. I think, probably earlier in my life or career, the word would have bothered me. But it was, I was poor. No running water, David, or electricity, living with an outhouse. Okay, that's poor.
But you were also shuttled between your mother, your father, your grandmother, and so forth. It's very disconcerting to be shuttled back and forth. So at what point did you realize that you had some skills that were maybe going to enable you to rise up? When you were young, you had some pretty good skills as an orator.
Well, I think kindergarten, I kind of felt it. I was...
Right. Did other people agree with you then that you were going to be special?
No, this is my kindergarten story. Listen, my grandmother had taught me, so I'm raised on this little acre. I used to call it a farm. Then I went back and saw it. It wasn't a farm. Right. It was an acre. Right. And I remember my grandmother taught me how to read. So I grew up learning to read, and I read Bible verses. I grew up reading. So by the time I was 6 and got shuttled to Milwaukee, and because my birthday came in the wrong time, I hadn't. The grace for me is that I didn't spend a day in a segregated school. So I did not have one moment of ever being conditioned to believe that I was less than anybody. So when I walked into my first kindergarten class, first time I'd ever seen little white children that my grandmother didn't, work for. And everybody was doing their ABC things. And I was like, why are the children doing the ABCs? So I wrote my kindergarten teacher, Miss New, a letter. And I said, dear Miss New, I do not belong here.
Right. So,
because I know a lot of big words. And then I proceeded to write every big word I knew. Anybody who reads the Bible here, it was Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Nehemiah, Jeremiah, and then I put an elephant and hippopotamus just because there were some more big words. So I kind of I saw the impression that made on Miss New.
Speaking of big words in Bible, your first name came from a biblical source, but it was supposed to be Orpah. How did it get to be Oprah?
Misspelled the first day I went to school, and it stayed that way. So it's on my birth certificate as Orpah.
But it's very famous. Very few people in the world are known by one name. There's Oprah, there's Elvis, there's Jesus. Very few people. But I mean,
there are a few others.
But suppose your name was just Mary or Jane.
It wouldn't have worked.
It wouldn't have worked. Okay.
And I remember once being in Baltimore, and I had a news director who, when I first came to work in Baltimore, had said to me, we're going to have to do something about that name. We need to do something about that because nobody's going to remember it or know how to pronounce it. And up until that time, David, I'd always wanted to have a name like everybody else's. So it was only when my bosses told me that, I was going to I needed to think about changing it. And they mentioned, Susie, because Susie's friendly, that nobody can say Susie and not say Susie Winfrey. Eyewitness News, that's a friendly thing. And it's only when I was challenged with the idea of changing it that I thought, no, I'm going to keep my name. So when I started in Baltimore, your mother can tell you this because she was there, they started me with a campaign called What is an Oprah? Trying to explain to people how to pronounce the name and
well, so those who may not know your background, you went to college in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And then you worked briefly in the Tennessee broadcasting operation. And then you were recruited to go to Baltimore, my hometown. And what you're referring to is that my mother used to watch you, and she would call me up and say, there's a terrific person on a show here. She's going national. I said, well, really, come on. People in Baltimore don't usually go national. But she was right.
Your mother knew.
I know. She was smart. You should listen to your mother. So when you went to Baltimore, you went initially to be an anchor woman. Mm-hmm. And then it didn't quite work out.
Yeah, I got fired.
Well, you
got demoted.
I was got demoted, but they had a contract, so they didn't say goodbye.
Yeah.
And then how did you work out to be on a afternoon show where you actually got to be an interviewer? How did that actually happen?
Well, what happened was this is what I now know with age and perspective, that many times getting demoted is an opportunity for something else to show up, or getting fired. You know, lots of people I've interviewed over the years who have these stories about the best thing that ever happened to you. It puts you in the next best place. I was not a good television reporter. I was too emotional. I would go out on the stories and, you know, then try to take blankets back to the people.
But you were also very young. You were 21,
yes,
22.
and I was very also empathetic, and I was always getting written up for getting myself involved in other people's business. And so I was making $22,000 a year. And my best friend Gail, who I met there at the time, she was also working there. And she said, oh my God, you're 22, making 22,000. Imagine when you're 25, then you're 30. So I'd be making 60 about now. It'd be good, 62. And glad that didn't work out. Yeah. But once I got demoted, they didn't want to pay out my contract. I was making $25,000 a year. They didn't want to pay me the $25,000,
right.
So they kept me on and said, "We'll put you on this talk show just to run out your contract."
And the person who wanted to demote you, has that person risen in the broadcast world?
As a matter of fact, they did. They moved on and did. It worked out.
When did you realize that you actually had a skill as an interviewer?
My skill comes from my listening ability. What gave me the power in the seat and the power with the microphone was I always saw myself as the surrogate for the audience.
The show worked very well, and all of a sudden, your contract is up for renewal, and then somebody comes along and says, how about a show in Chicago? Why don't you do a show in Chicago? And you decided to leave, is that right?
I decided to leave. My contract really wasn't up at the time, but I started feeling like, I think everybody knows, I've moved my whole life on instinct, you know? I feel like now it's time to let the show go. I feel like it's time to move on because I've grown as much as I can grow. When I've grown as much as I can grow in a space, that's my instinct to move. So I started to feel like I needed to move someplace else. New York felt too crowded, too hard to get around. It was the #1 market. Everybody wanted to come here. As a matter of fact, I had an agent at the time, and I said to the agent, I just want to be a substitute for Joan London. Remember Joan London? I said, could you just get me a job as the substitute for Joan London when she goes on vacation and maybe she wants to take a break? And that agent said to me, that's never going to happen because they've already got one black person. And I said, really? And he said, yes, Bryant Gumbel. I said, it's the wrong station.
Right.
It's on he's on another station. So maybe they would take one more over, but he said, no, that's not going to work out. So I let that agent go.
Okay.
And I ended up going to Chicago because I was on somebody else's audition tape, actually. One of my producers had gone there. She called me up and she said, Dennis Swanson just saw you on my tape. She had been hired as a producer. And he wants to know, would you be interested in doing a job here called AM Chicago? That's how that happened.
So you got there, and it was an existing show, and you took it over, and all of a sudden it became pretty popular. In fact, they changed the name to the Oprah Winfrey Show.
Yeah, because people started calling it Oprah Show. They
Okay.
said, you see the Oprah Show today? The Oprah Show. So they weren't calling AM Chicago. And this is the thing. Every single person, other than my friend Gail, who was still in Baltimore, had said to me, you're going to fail in Chicago, because I was going to be going up against Phil Donahue. Everybody said...
Phil who?
Phil...
Right. Listen,
yes,
wait, come on.
I was going to be going up against Phil Donahue. And, you know, it didn't matter to me because I did not think that he was beatable. And I actually said it to my boss, Dennis Swanson, who's gone on to do great things in television. Dennis Swanson said, we know you can't beat him, so don't worry about it, just be yourself. And that saved me, because imagine little chubby me with a Jerry curl, being told, now you've got to go and you've got to beat Phil Donahue. He said, we're just a local show here, and so if you can get a number, we'll take it. So and so I had no pressure. So I just went on the air and I was myself.
So he ultimately left Chicago and moved to New York because of the competition, I guess. I'm not sure. And ultimately you...
Well, I beat him, David. I did.
Right. I know. Well,
I did beat him. I did. I wasn't trying to. I wasn't even trying to. But, you know, it's just like...
I'm sympathetic to white men with white hair, but you did very well.
Well, he actually was so gracious, and I have always said, had there not been a Phil Donahue, there couldn't have been an Oprah show, because he paved the way for that kind of audience, you know, smart women at home, many of them stay-at-home mothers, taking care of their kids, some of them going back into the workforce in the mid-'80s when I started, who were interested in talking about purposeful things, meaningful things. So he opened that door.
When did you realize in Chicago or Baltimore that you actually had a skill as an interviewer that was really better than anybody else's? And where do you think that skill came from?
I never thought it was better than anybody else's. What I do think I have that is really uniquely my own is my ability to connect to the audience, because my skill comes not from my interviewing ability, my skill comes from my listening ability, and my skill comes from me knowing fundamentally inside myself that I am no different than the audience. So what gave me the power in the seat and the power with the microphone was I always saw myself as the surrogate for the audience. So I would ask people questions that I would not normally ask. I mean, I asked some really embarrassing question once, not because I wanted to know the answer, but because I thought the audience did. And then I thought, well, I'm not going to ask what the audience wants the next time. And when I get in that situation, I put myself in a bad situation. I asked Sally Field when she was dating Burt Reynolds. Remember this, Gail? I asked Sally Field, did Burt sleep with his toupee on?
What was the answer, or the question?
And I would never do that today. I wouldn't do it because I was doing it because I was getting pushed by the producers like, people want to know. So I was thinking I was doing it on behalf of the audience. She shut down, and I could see that it embarrassed her, and I never got another thing from her. So I thought, okay, that was wrong. I learned from that.
So while you were there doing the show, you got an opportunity to be an actress in The Color Purple.
Yes.
And what was...
Well, not just an opportunity. Oh, Lord. I don't even have time for this story because I never wanted anything more in my life, David. And I haven't wanted anything as much since, as much as I wanted The Color Purple. I'd read the book. I'd seen a review in the New York Times. So I started hearing that they were going to do a movie. Long story short, I auditioned for the movie, and only because Quincy Jones no such thing as happenstance. Quincy Jones was going through Chicago. My little show, AM Chicago, was on. They were looking for an actress to play this part. I did not know Quincy Jones. He is coming out of his shower after taking the red eye. He is there for a deposition because he's testifying on behalf of Michael Jackson for somebody who said, you know, Billie Jean was their lover or whatever. And so he's there in Chicago. He's coming out of the shower. The TV set is on, and he sees me on AM Chicago. And he thinks, I think that girl could be in the movie. So he tells his people who call me. I had been praying and hoping to be in this movie, The Color Purple. And I get a call. One day, I'm just in my office, and the casting agent says, I'm calling about a movie we're doing. Would you be interested in coming to audition? The movie's called Moonsong. And I said, well, I wasn't praying for a movie called Moonsong. I was praying for a movie called The Color Purple. Could this be The Color Purple? He said, no, the movie's called Moonsong because at the time that's what they were all calling it because Steven didn't want people to know he was doing it. I went and auditioned for it, and I knew, of course, it was The Color Purple.
Quincy was the producer, and
Steven Spielberg was
the director. And so you got the part?
I got the part.
I love Hopper. God knows I do. But I kill him dead before I let him be.
You were nominated for an Academy Award, and you should have won, but didn't win that year, right?
But it's okay. The dress didn't fit, and I wouldn't have been able to get out of the chair anyway. So.
Thanks, Martin. Was that hard to give up Chicago?
I don't feel sad at all. I feel a great sense of pride. I think that what we were able to do with that show every day, I'm just proud of the work, and then I realized it's time to let that go.
Let's talk about your show. You ended the show in 2011, but slightly around that time, you decided you were going to build the OWN, which is Oprah Winfrey and Oprah Winfrey Network. And that was a joint venture between you and Discovery Channel. And you were still doing your show in Chicago, and all of a sudden they say, let's do a network. And so you're still finishing the show, and the network is starting, so it didn't go as well as you would have liked in the beginning.
It was a mess in the beginning, yeah.
But then you finished your show, and it worked out pretty well. Now it's doing very well.
Doing very well. We have really some really great successful shows on there. And I partnered with David Rubenstein this past year to create this drama series called Queen Sugar.
Right.
Another drama series called Greenleaf. So I am now able to, it's the next level for me. Every day on my show for 25 years, I was the storyteller, helping people to let their stories out into the world in such a way that enhanced them or helped them see themselves differently or however it showed up for them. And now I get to use drama, the platform of drama, to create stories that allow people, particularly African American people, to see and feel themselves in a way that shows us as people of value, as people who care about the things that everybody else cares about. You know, the one thing I was always trying to do through all of my work, particularly all those years of the Oprah Winfrey Show, was to let people see what Maya always said, is that we really are more alike than we are different. And that when you get into somebody's home and you're sitting around the kitchen table, I don't care who you are or what your kitchen table looks like or how many square feet you have, that the feelings are the same, that we find our deepest humanity at that kitchen table. And when you open the door and I look in your house, which I used to do on the Oprah Show, I used to just love going to people's houses. Like, I just wonder what you're doing for dinner, and then dropping in and say, hey.
So to do the OWN, you basically moved from Chicago, where you had been living for 25 years.
Yes.
Moved to the West Coast.
Yes, that's right.
And was that hard to give up Chicago, or you didn't mind?
No, I think everybody has to, particularly you know this, having hit 60, there comes a point, and I'm really good at this, is at not holding on to what was, and being able to live in this present moment. You know, I never was one of those women who's afraid to tell your age or you're trying to be something you're not. I mean, I think for everything there's a time and a season. The Bible completely right about that. I think, and you know in your own self when it's time to move from that. I remember last year, we were going through the building, and I was going through with Gail, who's been with me through everything, and Gail's like, I feel sad. Don't you feel sad? And I said, I don't feel sad at all. I feel a great sense of pride. I think that what we were able to do with that show every day, sitting really in the heart of America, allowing people to see the best and sometimes the worst of themselves through their neighbors and dysfunction and ideas that we brought to them. But I'm just proud of the work. And then I realized it's time to let that go. So no, I don't feel that at all. The only thing that was hard was when the building came down. I sold the building, which was really like a campus. There were 5 buildings. And when that first main building came down and somebody Instagrammed it, that's the only time I had to like, ugh, it's really happening. You know, but it's no different than, have you ever gone back to your house where you used to live and the house is gone?
Well, I went back to my childhood home not too long ago with my mother for a TV show, and I knocked on the door and I said, can we come in? I used to live here a long time ago, and they called the police. They thought I was a robber or something. Anyway, so you mentioned a couple times Gail, and Gail King is here. She's your best friend. And tell me, how do you maintain a friendship when you live in such different cities all the time, and you've maintained it over a long period of time?
Yeah, since those days in Baltimore, since we were 21 and 22. And I say to my girls at my school, you wish yourself, they call her Auntie Gail and me Mamo, I said, you all wish to have a friend like Auntie Gail. You want to have a friend who wants the most, the best, and the highest for you. I have never seen a person like Gail.
Okay.
I've never.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, everybody, especially if you are on the rise in your career and you have had certain friends, and they all act like they're happy for you, but not everybody's happy for you. And every now and then you can hear just a teeny bit of jealousy. You can hear it, you can sense it. I've never had a moment's jealousy from Gail in, you know, the 30-odd years of her friendship, except for the one time I was on stage dancing with Tina Turner. That's the only time I ever heard Gail goes, I wish that was me.
People call you all the time and say, give me money for this, give me money for
and
that.
I don't,
How do you deal with all that?
I don't pay any attention to that. Helping girls, because I was a poor girl and I know what that feels like, it resonates in my spirit.
You've been very public over the years about your weight issues, and now you're a big shareholder in Weight Watchers. So how do you kind of deal with the weight issues over the years?
I tried to let that work for me, you know. Actually, Weight Watchers call me up, and as I said, I don't do anything that doesn't feel truthful or organic or like, so they're asking me to be a spokesperson, and I said, well, I've never been on the program. I've always thought the people who had to count points, I don't know about those people. And but the fact that Weight Watchers was calling me, that's how bad it got. The Weight Watchers called me. So, you know, that is a sign when Weight Watchers says, let us help you.
Yeah, right.
You go look in the mirror and go, oh, I see what you're talking about. Okay.
Right.
So I was just doing what I always do, and that is not just trying to be a spokesperson, but listen, how can I own a piece of it? Because since the days of the Oprah Winfrey Show, you know, that worked out for me.
Right, pretty well.
The biggest, greatest decision I made with the Oprah Show was to own it myself. So the very first year that we came up for renegotiation for a contract, because my bosses at ABC had given me a really hard time when I was doing The Color Purple. They had said to me, you only have 2 weeks vacation. And I wanted to do that movie more than anything in my life. And I said to them, I will give up my entire contract's vacation if you will just let me do the movie. So I had a really smart attorney at the time, Jeff Jacobs, who said, you never want to be in that position again where you have to give up yourself, give up your life. So when the contract negotiation came around, the second time I said, what if I own the show and you don't pay me unless the show makes money? And we make money together, so let's split it. So I approach everything that way. If I'm going to be of value to you, it should also be of value to myself.
You are now the CEO of your company. You're the owner and the CEO, and you've got thousands of people working for you.
Yeah.
And as a CEO, do you have to say no to people all the time, and is that hard to do?
You get other people who say no.
No.
For you.
Okay.
Saying no is hard. That is one of the big lessons, life lessons for me. I grew up, obviously, girl, raised in the South, women need to please, wanting to please everybody. So it took me a long time to get that lesson of only saying yes to what you intend to say yes to. And so I tried to do all of my business decisions and personal decisions based upon my intention.
When you develop the success you've had, what comes along with it in our society is money.
Yeah.
And when you make as much money as you have made, and I've been fortunate to make as well, you really can't spend it all yourself. No matter how much you want to buy a new plane or a new home.
But you can try.
You can try, but it's tough.
You can have a really good time trying.
It's tough. It's tough. I mean, how many things can you really buy?
That's true.
Can you talk about your philanthropy, how you decide to give away money? And by the way, you just recently became the largest donor to the Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington. Why did...
Thank you for that. I agreed to be on that board over 13 years ago because I believe you are nowhere in life unless you know where you've come from. And that understanding the true root of what has been paved for you is necessary for a people to move forward. So I wanted to leave the legacy of that for generations to come, particularly for African American children, but also for people of all races to understand who we are as a people and as a culture and what that has meant to America.
So now you decide how to give away money by virtue of a foundation, you have a staff. How do you decide?
So I wanted to give money to that. No, I don't have a staff. I don't. I do have a foundation, and I do have people working there. But nobody tells me.
Okay, but people call you all the time and say, give me money for this, give me money for that.
I don't,
How do you deal with all that?
I don't pay any attention to that. I don't pay any attention to that.
Okay.
So in the beginning, I used to. In the beginning, David, I was so overwhelmed by it because I couldn't figure out when your salary's published in the paper, how much money you make, and everybody knows it, so you can no longer say, I don't have it. I couldn't figure it out. I was people were leaving home, leaving their husbands, boarding trains, coming to see me. I had people standing outside my door in Chicago. And I was just like overwhelmed by it. And then I started to, I got lots of advice from lots of people about what to do. I now only do what I intend that comes from what is important to me. So helping girls, because I was a poor girl and I know what that feels like, it resonates in my spirit. I know that when you change a girl's life, you not only change hers, but you change her entire community, because girls give back to the family, give back to the community. So saving girls around the world is really important to me. Educating girls and women and empowering girls and women, because I am one myself, feels like a natural thing.
Have you ever thought that, given the popularity you have, that you could actually run for president and actually be elected?
I thought, oh, gee, I don't have the experience. I don't know enough. I don't know. And now I'm thinking, oh.
All right. Well, okay. Let me ask you a question about politics. You avoided politics throughout your career, and you've had no politicians on your show. You said they were not really what you wanted to do. And then somebody named Barack Obama was running for president in 2008, and you said, I'm going to violate my principle, and I'm going to endorse him. And it seemed to work out. It helped him a great deal, you might say, I think.
Interestingly enough, it wasn't the kind of thing, again, I operate from what feels like the right thing to do. You would be stunned at how little I thought about, was it the right thing or what it was going to cost me. I did it because I felt compelled to do it. I felt from the time I saw him in 2004 at the convention, and I was in Chicago and I'd seen him as a senator around, and I saw that, like everybody else did, that convention in 2004. And I remember I was alone in my house, and I thought, he's going to be president someday, and I hope I'm around to help him do it. So I started telling him in 2004 and 2005, when you run for president, let me know. When you run for president, let me know. I had a group of African Americans at my house who had all been really major legends for me. So I had this big party. I like having parties. So I had this big party, and I had like Diana Ross and Cicely Tyson and Maya and Coretta Scott King and all of these wonderful, legendary women to thank them for paving the way for me. And then I had a bunch of youngins like Mariah and Janet and all of those groups to also help me thank them. And I had Barack Obama come to my house and speak in 2005, where I had all these people there. And I said to that group in 2005, this man is going to be president of the United States someday, and I hope I'm alive when it happens. And if I am, I will do whatever I can in my power. I'll quit my job, I'll go work for him, I'll canvass for him, And they said, what's his name again? That was, what's his name again? That was in 2005. So it wasn't, I felt like this is something I can do.
Did some of your viewers criticize you for getting on politics?
Major criticism. And I was surprised by it, actually, because I was only surprised by it because I'd never thought about it. It didn't occur to me that people didn't know that I voted one way or the other.
So the first night he was inaugurated, 2009, January 20th, 2009. So upstairs at the White House, you were invited to the residence. And what was it like?
How'd you know?
Well, I know.
Okay.
And so I was wondering what it was like. Here, African Americans are in the residence of the White House. The president's African American, and this is a house that's built by slaves. And what was the emotion like that first night? You got somebody elected president of the United States. You helped him get elected. And what was it like that first night?
It was indescribable. I don't think that there are actually words that could. I heard Dave Chappelle actually on Saturday Night Live talking about looking over and seeing a party recently. It wasn't the same, I don't think, as inaugural night. It was it felt surreal. And obviously you're looking at all the paintings on the wall of past presidents and leaders who were all white. It was surreal. We could just kind of, I remember walking out afterwards, it was Gail Stedman, Gail's kid, we were all like, did that just happen? It felt surreal.
Barack Obama was the first African American to be elected president, and now we've had somebody elected president who was a media figure, you might argue. We've never had a woman elected president of the United States. So have you ever thought that given the popularity you have, we haven't broken the glass ceiling yet for women, that you could actually run for president and actually be elected?
I actually never thought that was, I never considered the question even a possibility. I just thought, oh.
Right, because it's clear that you don't need government experience to be elected president of the United States, right?
I thought, oh, gee, I don't have the experience. I don't know enough. I don't know. And now I'm thinking, oh.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. Well, now, speaking of O, that's the name of your magazine, right?
Yes, it is.
Right. So a couple final questions before we wrap up. As you consider whether you're going to run for president of the United States or not.
No, that won't be happening. But I did used to think, well, gee, you had to know so much more than I thought you had to know. But anyway.
So today, as you look at what you're doing, your highest priorities are developing OWN and acting and also executive producing.
Yes, I just finished The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's Henrietta Lacks's cells were used in effect for the polio vaccine and other things. And your role in that is?
Her daughter, Deborah Lacks.
Wow. So are you going to continue acting as well as?
I'm going to continue acting. I'm going to continue developing shows that speak to the humanity of people in a way that makes them want to live better and do better, and that exalts their victories and lets them know that they are important and meaningful in the world. You know, I would have to say that every day, David, that show was it was like therapy for me, kind of like now.
Right.
Every day the show I paid attention. So I've never been to a therapist, but I paid attention all those days on the show. And I made therapy acceptable for a lot of people who thought, not me, not. So one of the things I started to get around mid to late 90s is that everybody that I had on the show at the end of the show would say something to me like, was that okay? Was that okay? How was that? Was that okay?
Right.
At the end of the interview. And I started to then track it. It didn't matter if it was, I had gone and done a show where I was in a prison and I was interviewing a father who was in jail for life for murdering his twin daughters. And at the end of the interview, even behind bars, he said to me, "Is that okay? How'd I do?" And Barack Obama said it when he sat in the chair the first time, and George Bush said it, Beyonce said it at the end of she taught me how to twerk and then said, "Is that okay?"
Right. So that's an acquired skill, do they? Right?
Yes, the working thing. But this is what I learned sitting in that chair for 25 years, that at the end of the day, whether you are interviewing me or I get to interview you, whatever your profession is, wherever you are in your life, in your relationships, every person that you encounter, every experience, the person wants to know, was that okay? Was that okay? And what I started to hear was that what people are really saying is, did you hear me? Did you hear me? And did what I say mean anything to you? And so I started to listen with that in mind, with that intention of validating that your being here, you're speaking to me, you're taking the time to do this with me is important because you matter. And that's true for everybody who's watching or listening, that every argument that you ever have, every encounter, the person just wants to know, did you hear me? Did you see me? And did I say anything that mattered?
How do you ever relax now?
I would say the word for me now is I'm content. I'm not just relaxed. I'm content, because I know a lot of rich people who are not happy, but I am not one of them.
But when
I am one of the happiest rich people you are ever going to see.
Well, when you're trying to get away from it all and just get away from everything, you just relax at one of your homes, or?
Yes, I relax. Well, and also it doesn't take a lot for me to relax. I can be happy looking at a leaf. Gail will say, what are you, sitting out under the trees with your thoughts? And I'll say, yeah, I can be happy with a book. I can be happy reading poetry. I can be happy in front of a fire. I can be happy with my dogs. I can be,
I'd like
to
thank you for doing this. I realize one of the great pleasures of your life is not being interviewed by me, so I appreciate you giving me the time to do this.
It has been a pleasure, though.
Thank you, and it's my pleasure completely. And I would like to say that this is a low-budget show compared to yours, so we are going to give a car out to everybody here, including you, but it's a smaller car than you usually give out. So it's a little car in here, and so it's a car.
Really? Oh, this is great!
So we can't afford a big car, but thank you for that.
That's so cute.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Great. Thank you.
Look at this in our blue.
Thank you.
That's good.
Thank you.